Hey, welcome. Hey, it's it's a Saturday and got the night free tonight. Got it all to myself. And so I was thinking, hey, you know what? I was talking on a Discord today about some people with some people that about evolution, and of course, it always kind of goes off the rails, and it's very difficult to talk about these topics in text mode, right? It's much easier in voice, even though they're complicated topics. I am not a biologist. I have no expertise in biology whatsoever. I just took biology a little bit in college, and I just happen to like evolutionary theory. So I like to have panels talking about evolution from my lay understanding of it, and then have other people come in and talk about it as well. So we used to do this on G Plus an awful lot. It was fun. And so I'm going to kind of like just hang out tonight and let's talk about evolution a little bit. All cards on the table. I accept evolutionary theory. I accept macro and micro. To me, there's really no difference. Microevolution is the same processes as macroevolution. I don't know any distinction between them other than macroevolution involves speciation, but speciation has to be something that is required even in a creationist model. So I did not understand what creationists were trying to tell me when they accepted micro but not macro, when it's the same processes, and they weren't able to tell me which processes they don't accept. And so anyways, long story short, that's what we'll be doing for probably an hour or so. It depends how busy it gets. I don't expect a lot because I don't know, it just hasn't been really a topic that people have been brought up lately. But anyways, Saint Maximus the Confessor, buenas noches, as they say in Spanish.
Oh, buenas noches, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo está bien?
Oh, pues está bien, pero muy cansado, necesito dormir más. Yo tengo hambre, necesito comida, pero es muy importante comer dos tiempos un día, un mínimo. I don't know, my Spanish sucks. Yo tengo un gato en mis zapatos.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for more of the experts on the evolutionary side to come in, but um, just going back with it, we can go on and on and on and kick the dead horse, but um, the main thing on my end is the yuck stuff. Just it's kind of frustrating. It's frustrating. Number one is
Let's talk about that. Yeah, enumerate the issues as a Christian, what you find offensive about younger creationism. Because I could tell you all cards on the table, young creationism is wrong. People need to deal with it, and I'm sorry, but it is wrong. Scientifically
yeah,
speaking, and every metric, it's wrong. It's really, there's no debate about it. It's just people that have misunderstandings, people that will willfully lie about it. But the reality is they're not getting anywhere. They're not converting anybody. They're just keeping the adherents who already believe it, in my opinion.
well, one of the big things is the the point of the point of Genesis 1 and even into part of Genesis 2 is not to give a scientific explanation. If you understand the poetry of it and its cross section of, I mean, I wish I had the tech savvy to show it, but it's not meant to be a science. It was never meant to be scientific. It was meant to show a theological purpose.
And I think that most Christians I know would probably agree with that. Okay, putting aside the younger creationists, most people, when they read the Bible, they don't take it as a science book. It was never intended to be a science book. Ken Hovind tried to make it into science, but that wasn't in. I think that it kind of harmed Christianity, because the Christians that are old Earth creationists, or if they're considered to be theistic evolutionists, they accept the age of the earth from science. They don't have to get around science. They don't say, look, science is wrong just because my belief is this, that I have to start with these previous suppositions. What they say is, okay, I accept there's a Christ, I accept the Christianity, but I also have to accept science. How do we reconcile this? And I do think Reasons to Believe as an organization that I done programs with, that at least attempts to. I don't think they do reconcile it, but I'm not a Christian. But at least they acknowledge the science. So what is it that you think is so offensive to young Earth creationists, where they will not revise their beliefs, and their beliefs that the Earth is young must take precedence? And welcome, Res Rhetoric. I'm so glad you're not on camera today. God, I've seen your face.
Well,
and Ozian, you're okay. You're okay looking. You're good looking. But I'm not today. I'm not going on camera. But Reds is even worse. So
I'm available.
Are you single?
Yeah.
Are you married? You're married.
Colorado biker. Hey.
Hey, what's up? Yeah.
Well, one of
Go
the
ahead.
biggest okay, so one of the biggest things when it comes down to it, I'm just trying to be reasonably on audio. I do have someone sleeping across the hallway. Um, there is one of the big things that is offensive to me is the fact that the point is lost in the yak. The point is not to show as the point of the writing of it is to show what is the function of creation. It's not, and in fact, and when you open it up with the Hebrew itself, Barashit bara Elohim et Shamayim, there, like you when you actually open it up, it doesn't open up as an exact stuff.
Yeah,
Yes,
no, I think you're right, and I think that biblical literalist and infallibilist and errantist who have to make this jump that the Bible has to be right in all aspects, including science, which is again more of a Hovinistic approach, shoot themselves in the foot. And I think it alienates Christians who have a scientific mindset, that are educated, that know about evolution properly. Because I got to tell you, 95%, this is a number I pulled out my butt, but that's just a number that has to do with the non sequitur show, of evolutionists I talk to mainstream on Facebook or Discord or other social media do not have even the most basic understanding of evolution. They have a straw man version. We've said this numerous times. Everybody seems to accept this, that they have a straw man version. And so the ones that do know evolution really, really well, they're the ones that, are paid to put out these publications and paid to put out these quote unquote papers, even though they're not papers, to get the believer still believing, to keep the believer still believing. Because the people that do know these topics, when they read these younger creationist essays and blogs and things of that nature, they point out the errors. And so the people that writing it, who have the PhDs, they know these errors. They have to know these errors. I do accept that some PhDs that are creationists truly believe their faith, and they will say, hey, look, we have to reconcile this because of young earth belief. But I do think a lot of them knowingly, willfully know it's BS and still do it anyways. But I don't understand why. But I think they all shoot themselves in the foot when they try to make science, the Bible, some kind of science book.
well,
Yeah.
here's one of the things that again, going back to it, if we actually open up if we actually open up the pages and understand the um, if we understand the opening of it, it doesn't show an exact point of time.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I actually use Maximus the Confessor on here is to actually kind of point towards that the even the very ancient Christian view is of cosmology in this sense was not that it isn't to give an exact point of time of start. It is not to say how God created the universe. It could have been evolution. I
Right.
don't really care. I'll be
Right.
honest, I don't care.
But they
The
really
big
have to have that telos. They really have to have that fundamental explanation. Their minds can't handle the fact
it
that maybe there's certain things we just don't know or can't know.
well here's the thing is it's not about the biggest issue that they forget is the Genesis 1 is not scientific. It's teleological, meaning
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if it's teleological. What is the purpose of the world? And so now that it's so the purpose of the world is a completely different question of then how did how did life evolve, or how did God create life,
Yeah.
or
What
whatever.
what what's the purpose? It's actually asking, I think, more of a teleos for purpose. What's the purpose, the reason why we exist, which has been an existential question that humanity has had since day one. This is a grounding question in philosophy. What is the meaning of life? Reds is back, so I want to welcome him, and I do want to put a shout out to Captive Desk. He has a really good video that he put out. Refuting 3 points of Tom Baton, I think it's Batten or Don Batten, um, from a he's a creationist, and he put out this guy creationist put out a video with three things that he thinks refute evolution, and I got to tell you, it was grade school level. It was completely bunk, and
Yeah,
You saw it, and I really think that Captain just did an amazing job, just shoving that right up his butt.
Well,
So to speak.
really, when you look at it, okay, so you had the opening line, great. Day one actually corresponds with, we can go into it, but breaking it down, I wish I was able to do a chart, but I'm on a cell phone. I'm not savvy in technology. Anyways, so when you go into the days, day through 6, day one corresponds with 4, 2 with 5, and 3 with 6. 1 to 3 is basically the foundation of of the functions, and then day 4 to 6 are the fulfillment of those functions. See, the ancient Near East didn't have a concept of like the mechanics of the universe like we do. It was functional.
Yeah,
So
how could they?
yeah, and so really, if you were to, with their understanding of the fact that they didn't have even a concept at that point, they didn't have a concept of ex nihilo when Genesis was written. Then you're stuck with, okay, um, so the purpose is even the purpose right there is not even ex nihilo. The purpose itself is God bringing the universe into order. So that right there does not actually, so the and so, and also to bring glory to himself. So when all is said and done, there is no contradiction between that text and science, unless you're going to try and read the mechanics of the universe into the text, which was never the purpose. So there really, I mean, there is some bedrock that you can get from there, such as the order, the order of the universe, the order of the universe and all that stuff. I get, like, we can go into how orderly it is. That's not even the purpose. I mean, there are some presuppositions that help found science, and that is historical. But still, that's, it's right there. The Yek argument falls apart when you go. It's anti-biblical. That's what
I
that's
think
what chapter 5.
Ozzy wants to jump in here a second. Let me read this real quick from Gary. There's really no conflict with creationism and evolution. I think there kind of is, and there isn't. But he says it's hypothetical that a deity did create the universe and the laws that govern evolution. The thing is that evolution allows a teleonomic explanation for the appearance of design. And does it negate the existence of a creator? No. Does it necessitate it? No. But the problem with positing a creator is you then have to explain, how is it that life came about over 13 billion years to where we are today? Of all the things that have had to happen, that had to be guided from some kind of deity to get where we are. And Hugh Ross wrote a book on this called Improbable Planet. And I'm not going to front. It was a good book. It really was. I talked to people about the science. Most people agreed that the science was pretty legit. But he talks about these large periods of time where there's extinction level events, like the heavy bombardment period, the Chicxulub meteor, the climate change, the volcanoes that produce climate change. There was all these extinction level events that we should have died, and yet each one of them were necessary to get where we were now. Right. And so to imagine a God that can manipulate the universe to such a fine degree to get us where we are right now, or at least 2,000 years ago, where Christ had to be at that exact same moment to be produced, it does seem to fly in the face of evolution, because it's not just these natural processes at that point. It's no longer teleonomic. It is absolutely teleological, driven by some kind of deity that has the power to do this, which I find to be incredulous. Maybe somebody could argue, hey, Steve, that's just an argument from incredulity. I grant that. But you still have to give me a little bit more evidence, not you specifically, but in general, somebody has to give me a little bit more evidence to how that would actually happen. And Ozian, how are you, man? And by the way, you just got done with a debate with, I wonder if Red's Rhetoric remembers this name. Boy, that's a tongue twister. Trade Jadlow. Reds, you remember that name? Trey?
I do remember the name vaguely.
Okay. Well, he was a pre-supper creationist. He was like Darth Dawkins light.
He's not a pre-supper.
He's a pre-supper, dude. He is a straight up pre-supper. I've had numerous conversations with Trey Jadlow. He
hates
call whatever he wants.
He starts off with his preamble, how much he hates pre-sup.
But he runs pre-subscript.
Yes. like because he wants to know like what your purpose is. I caught him like in the beginning because I'm so used to these debates with these people. I was like, in these debates, there's always like this presupposition about intentionality for everything.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and but that's not one of the two you want me to grant. He didn't even want me to grant causality. He said it was a logical entailment of law of non-contradiction.
I don't see how that follows.
No,
He's
me
run that
either.
argument before.
He, he didn't
Maybe
connect
there.
the dots for me either.
Yeah, maybe it's just my epistemic limitation. I've never understood his argumentation. I know that
Presuppositionalism, the ultimate mental circle jerk.
it really is. No, absolutely. I said the exact same thing. It's the most honest form of apologetics, bar none, is presup. But Ozian, what do you want to add about the effect of the potentiality of a deity, especially let's talk about the Christian deity in specific. I don't normally generalize like that, but since I do deny the Christian deity, and we have Christian here, I think it's appropriate in this particular hangout. But what would it matter if the Christian God existed or not as far as evolution?
So like I thought Colorado Biker made a point there, but then super determinism would have to be true, right? Because God would have to indeterminism couldn't be true because we have indeterminate states, especially with small stuff. It seems like over 13.8
Yeah, I would
billion
grant
years
that. I could grant that.
talking
I don't
about.
think it necessitates superdeterminism, but I think superdeterminism is the only thing left for local hidden variable model that would
Yeah.
even allow for certain things. So if it was the case, then yeah, it would probably be. I can't think of an actual entailment for superdeterminism, but since superdeterminism is allowed still, it doesn't. I don't know what it gets you though, but yeah,
I
it
think
would be a
it
very
gets
fatalistic view of the universe, though.
yeah, it'd be fatalistic.
Very
Well,
mechanistic too.
yeah, so free will wouldn't exist, so you're going to have problems with a lot of Christian worldviews. But there's Christians that reject free will, so
Yeah,
there's no
but what I
contradiction
mean
there
by
with
fatalism is
Christianity.
that the fatalism would be like more of an approach that no matter what you do, it's not going to matter if God has a divine
I get
plan
it.
for you. Yeah, so if you're sick, why go to the doctor? Why bother? Because if God wants you to do something later on, you're going to get healthy. If He doesn't want you to, it doesn't matter what you do. It's a fatalism approach.
But fatalism traditionally was about significant events in your life were foretold,
Well,
basically,
yeah,
not like every moment.
getting sick that can kill you would be very, very, a significant event. If you're really, really, really ill and you could, cease to be, the fatalist could just say, look, that's up to God's hands. And they do that. Christians used to do that a lot. They don't do it so much because they end up dying. Statistically, if they're really, really, really sick, it's
Well,
always better to get medical
But
attention. But
really, it depends because, like, it depends historically. Because if you do look at if you look at the area that was influenced a lot by the growth of medical books in the Arabian area, Arabian Christians, your Muslims that were very, very well versed in classical learning. A lot of them were writing medical books, and so like what is his name? Ibn Sina wrote one of the medical books that actually influenced how medical books are written today. So it's it really his history is complex in of itself, but you know my big thing with the without going into all the nitty gritty and all the verbiage, just to keep it simple, um you know i I think one of the recent Hovines, Eric Hovine had a uh had a debate with Mike Jones, and he got obliterated in that debate. It's like, but the big thing there is he is repeating the same crap, and it's I think the frustrating thing here comes down to, without even going into all the philosophical jargon, it's just dishonest. It's like you saw your dad get in my mind. I'm like, at this point, I'm like, it's like, Eric, you you saw your dad Kent get obliterated in that debate. A lot of evidence come out, and your dad could not even handle even today, he does not. He wants to absolutely ignore a couple. Biblically, he wants to ignore everything that goes against his yek position.
Well,
That is
well, yeah,
not. Yeah, that's not. Sorry, and I'm going to say one more thing.
sure, sure.
Another thing that gets kind of makes me my eyebrows perk up a little bit is when you look at the fundamentalism and that yek is part of. You don't really see good fruits in there. You actually see
Hmm.
a lot of destructive behavior,
Very
and
much so.
yeah, you just
On the ground level, again, I want to differentiate between creationism that you find online, social media, as opposed to the creationists that are actually doing the writings for creation.com, Genesis and Genesis. Um, they are a lot more technical. Are they right? No, they're completely wrong. But they're at a much different level of education than the people that are arguing against evolution. I don't know anybody that's well educated on evolutionary biology that denies evolutionary biology. I don't think I can name anybody that is. There are
well,
people that are lay people that maybe, but I mean, I don't think anybody that has a PhD in biology that isn't a young Earth creationist will argue against evolution.
and here's the big thing is I begin to one of the things you can always ask a young Earth creationist is which school of thought on biological evolution are you speaking about, because there's actually more than one. And so a lot of times they'll try to pigeonhole a Darwin as the sole monolithic
Right.
school of thought on it. He's not. And
Yep. And Darwinism too. Yeah, the word Darwinism has multiple different usages. And I don't even like the term anymore because the original Darwinism is not the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution is the modern evolutionary synthesis combined with descent with modification. And so I think when people creationists are using the term Darwinism, they're not using it as people generally do in a colloquial sense, even in the academic literature. They're using it as the original version of Darwin's theory of Darwinism, where we know Darwin got stuff wrong. We understood that he made mistakes. He thought heredity was blended, not particulate. That was a major mistake he made. He thought that species had this rule that they had to produce more offspring than that what died out, or something like that. But I mean, he formulated the theory to say, look, we can explain modern extant speciations and show that why the world has all these millions of animals based upon biological factors, these biological processes that have been going on for billions of years. We don't need a god to say, oh, look, these species came about in 6,000-7,000 years, which not only is fundamentally just biologically impossible. What I was asking people was, what process in evolution, whether you micro or macro, it doesn't matter, they're the same processes. What process do biologists have that creationists deny? And I couldn't get a single person to answer the question. They all accept natural selection, they all accept genetic drift, they all accept gene flow, they all accept speciation, because if you go to creation.com, they tell creationists, stop telling people we don't accept speciation. We have to have speciation to explain the ark.
Yeah.
It's just hyper.
Yeah, there's another thing about the creationists too is they'll try to make it to be where it had to be a literal global flood when you actually understand the ancient Near Eastern mindset. Okay, uh they the world that the world as they understood it around them could have been flooded. Okay.
A local
uh
flood, sure, I absolutely think that.
yeah, yeah, and so it's one of those things where that the way they would have probably built the ark at that point, which would have actually been round. And there's a reason why I hold to that. I forgot the name of the author. He's a brilliant author that's translating multiple ancient tablets, and he lives over
You talk
in England.
about Finkel?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
yeah, yeah.
Like even though he doesn't believe in the Noah's Ark existed, and he still presents a really good case for the Ark, if it was built, would have been round. And there's multiple texts to show that, and there's also there's a reason for that. And also, here's another thing. Um, even if the even if Noah didn't exist, let's just go with that one. Even if he was used as uh, as as
An archetype,
um,
some
yeah,
kind
an
of
archetype.
archetype. Yeah.
Let's just say he was used as an archetype. It still does not detract from the purpose of the text, which is to show the uncreation, because
Mhm.
the earth was because the way it was saying the earth was becoming bloody and people were becoming violent, to the reverse of creation, then installing creation again. um that right there, the purpose of it is really not to show, is again, it's not to show a literal scientific thing. It's a show of a source of salvation. So again, the teleology of the text is being bastardized by Yek.
Well, do you think? Okay, we'll get Odie in a second. Do you think that the younger creationist flood model, the stories are so similar to other Mesopotamian flood stories? This has been longstanding. The Epic of Gilgamesh, even over in Mexican culture, in the Central America, they have what's called the Popol Vuh, which has a very similar narration, but from a very different time period, right? Because these great deluges, these great floodings happen on rivers, and so it's natural for mankind to have these types of stories.
Well,
But you
it's
know,
yeah. It's natural for them to do that, but there are vast differences between them, but still
yeah, that's
when,
yeah. But
yeah.
it always seems to be some similarities. There's always a hero of the story. There's always some kind of raft that's being used. There's always animals involved. There are some similarities. Ozian,
Well,
real quick. Go ahead.
when you do kind of look at it though, it's but if you look at them all together, when you look at every single one of them, the issue is not to show a scientific account. It's always to show a salvation account. So, but here's the thing: they will also try to the Yek crowd, and I consider it its own religion, to be honest. So I'm
I
going to
do.
say,
I think young Earth creationism is an offshoot of religion. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm okay
So
with that.
it's so in of itself, so young Earth creationism. When you look at it, it's like, okay, they're saying, okay, the Earth had these fountains in the deep, and they it caused vast shifts in the landscapes, and and all that. I'm like, there is there's no evidence for that.
None.
Um,
No
no.
scientific evidence. Yeah, and I really want to clarify before Ozian jumps in here that when people say there's no evidence, they really should probably clarify what they mean by that. There's no scientific evidence.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and so when you actually understand how they would have understood the firmament and all that kind of stuff, it really does make sense. How they would
oh
have
yeah, I don't
understood it.
disagree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
from an journalist view.
But when you understand like what the crystalline firmament was, that it was actually solid according to the mythos of that time, straight across the board, well, there were variations between each culture, but there was a understanding of a solid crystalline firmament, that the gods would have been their kingdom would have been on top of that,
Yeah,
so to speak.
we see the dome. We see rockets go
Yeah.
up, and what do they hit? They hit the dome, according to flat
Well,
earthers, right?
flat
Yeah.
earthers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't. Yeah, and yeah,
Yeah, that's why I think. Look, that's the only theory worse than young Earth creation is flat
yeah.
Earth.
Well,
Yeah,
flurfs are one of.
Red's fluff. Red loves it.
Yeah, of course. That's my forte right there.
I'm
I,
not a.
I I've been roped into flat Earth debates too, Red. Like I don't know what happened, but all I do are
Um,
flat Earth debates.
I don't know. I really admire Reds for able to sit through flat Earth discussions. They bore the crap out of me. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes they're interesting when you have a flat earther that at least makes a valid attempt. But they're I think most of them are posed, and they just sound so stupid. And I just lost interest. Sure, for comedic value, great. But I mean, Reds, when's the last time we had a flat earther that really had any kind of articulate, coherent argument? I never.
I mean,
if there was one, I
dude,
don't remember.
the last time we had a flat earther on your show, He was embarrassed to call himself a flat earther.
That's
Well,
pretty bad.
they did not. I'm just a globe skeptic. I'm not
Yeah,
a flat earther.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I'm a globe.
it's even worse than that. It's he is a flat earther. He just says that the Earth isn't flat because mountains are a thing.
Oh, you're talking about Bev.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Yeah.
that.
The mountains are
I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah,
Well,
That dude has been coming around my channel lately, and I haven't blocked him because he haven't done anything personal to me. I have a rule: no matter how much you disagree with me, until
he
you start,
is
make it personal, you're fine. And he hasn't made it personal with me, for, that. But he's
no,
just
he's an absolute idiot. He's incredibly
absolutely
dishonest,
sure, yeah.
but in my opinion, he's harmless.
Yeah, that's a good way of pointing it out.
I would say that the most educated flat Earth debater right now is probably Witsit when it comes to reading the papers and stuff like that. But even then, he'll make claims, and none of his claims are supported. They're all nonsense. But I did want to comment on this topic because I think there is important discussion when it comes to things like young Earth creationists and try to treat the Bible. I just had a debate against Nadir about is the Quran scientific a couple days ago. It's the same silly nonsense, like trying to say there's science to be found in the Quran. But I think you guys pointed it out before. It's supposed to be like a spiritual guide to give you purpose, to get ethics and morality from, to teach you lessons about how to live the world. And the risk you run when your theology is that the earth is young, evolution is false, and all these claims, then flat earthers come into the picture too, like Dean Odell and stuff when he debated Greg Locke recently. The risk you run is that when your followers go out and actually do the research, if they're actually honest and interested and have the intellectual capability to actually engage with the topic, you run the risk of losing your followers, the people that believe in the faith, and people suffer from crisis of faith. They fall out. They become angry online atheists for like 2 or 3 years, bashing Christians every day. But if
Yeah.
you, yeah, but if you don't deny science, you don't risk
Yeah,
your faith dying
Yeah.
out.
I
Well,
totally agree with you. But Wayne Fillmore, when I debated him on evolution, he left young Earth creationism, but he still remained Christian. And he's one of the very few, because you're right. A lot of people that become these angry atheists that I have issues with, they feel like they've been misled. They feel like they've been duped, and they lash out against Christianity as a whole. And I'm not going to argue whether that is right or wrong. That's them. But that's what we see happen. That's reasons why they become that angry atheist, because they're like, look, I've been lied to. My education was suffering because, not me personally, but they have argued. I've talked to them. Their education has suffered because they were learning things that was not right science. And so, if you don't start
yeah.
with the foundation at the very beginning of how to learn science properly, you can never learn science properly. Just like mathematics, I got to tell
It's
you,
just,
real quick, I didn't learn math growing up very well. I loved science. I loved learning about physics, but I always read books that didn't have the math involved. And I never really understood the physics, or excuse me, the math involved until I graduated high school. And then
Well, you can always take the easy way out. The reason why Witsit sounds intelligent is because he's not doing the work. It is all Chat GPT.
You know what? I've seen that now. It's funny you
Yeah.
mentioned that, and I want to ask you a question, Rez. It's funny you mentioned that because people know. About 2 weeks ago, I discovered Chat GPT. I mean, I knew it existed. I never bothered with it. So I've been playing with it. And I got to tell you, I recognize now that some people that I was talking to were using this program because it gets crap wrong. It is not scientifically literate. It is 3.5 at least is horrible. You have to train it even to get a session, even to get the most basic math right. 4.0 is supposed to be better. But I got to tell you, I can tell when people now are using chat. It's fine as a tool, and I've been using it for the last couple of weeks, but I've never, all my arguments were from 2018, 19. They were not done by Chat GPT. And so nobody can accuse me of that. But I have, in the last couple of weeks, recognized now that people are just running through Chat GPT, which I got to tell you is not infallible by any means. I want to ask Reg this real quick. So Piggybup says, and I already know the couple of answers to this, but I think that this no, so I'm sorry. If no, one before it. There we go. I mean, I thought a good point they made was the light refraction shouldn't be able to cause one to see over a certain distance, even though it's possible with a good telescope or camera. If the Earth had so much curvature after a certain amount of distance, it would be impossible to see over the curve. But that's not what happens. Actually, that's exactly what happens. When they're over the curve, we can't see them. No P900, no P1000, no telescope can ever see it unless it's some kind of atmospheric refraction. Correct, Reds? Am I off base on here? Did I steal your thunder?
No, you're not stealing my thunder. But here's the thing. A challenge I give to flat earthers is to at least ones that are in the United States, and most especially ones that are in Florida, where I am. If you go to the north side of the Skyway Bridge and with a Nikon P1000 or P900 or a telescope, a proper telescope, and you look at the Tampa Bay skyline, it doesn't matter how bad the refraction is. You can go there on the crappiest day imaginable. You will never see the bottom of those towers.
Yeah,
ever. I drive that bridge every single day. I've been doing it for 2 years, and sometimes I like to pull over, and take some images. My camera is portable after all. So I go there and I've been taking images and more images and more images, and I am selecting the best days, the clearest days. And those are the images that you see on Twitter. But I also have a bunch of images that I'm not going to share because quite honestly, they're garbage. But at the very least, what I can say is that there is not one day that I've been out there that I've been able to see the bottom of those towers. So we have two options. One, either the Earth is round, or two, a lot of people in Tampa are dead.
Yeah. Well, that's a retirement community. So let me ask you guys though, why is it that people will recognize the scientific illiteracy and the scientific issues with flat Earth, but they don't apply those exact same critical thinking skills to young Earth creationism? There's no difference. The flat earther is making these bizarre misunderstandings of physics and science as some kind of fact, and yet the young Earth creationist is doing the exact same thing, only instead of being the shape of the Earth, dealing with the time of the Earth, the age of the Earth. I don't understand how a single person could sit there and say, well, flat earthers are crazy, flat earthers don't know physics, they're absolutely wrong, but I accept that all species came from a couple of animals that lived on an ark 8,000, 7,000, 5,000, 4,000 years ago, whatever it was, and that all we see came from those species. That to me is the same absolute lack of critical thinking, because they're not being consistent in their methodology. They're not being consistent in the application of what we know about scientific facts and scientific methods and basically common sense, because you have to apply to the fact that in physics, you have to assume that the laws of physics are going to remain constant. And in order for young Earth creationism to be true, somewhere along the lines, they had to be violated. And I'm sorry that you're no longer doing science. And young Earth creationists love to say that young Earth creationism is scientifically true, but it can't be, because it violates everything we know about science.
Another thing that actually hurts them too, well, hurts their ideology too, is when you do a close reading of the text involved, getting into the Adam and Eve part. When they sin and they ate the fruit in the text, they're going to have to explain. They'll a lot of times they'll explain like these creatures like would then be cursed, and then then they would become these deadly creatures. And I'm like, okay, well then you're pretty much showing some sort of evolution right there.
Right. Well, how do they okay, so how would they explain Ozzy and whoever, how would they explain in Australia they have so many species that are completely venomous and poisonous. These are some of those deadliest species on the planet, and they all develop these types of same toxins and poisons in the same areas, geological areas, for predation, for trapping, killing prey quickly. Even in the sea, we have sea snakes and kraits and sea anemones and all these different animals. The key blue ring octopus. What is cone shells, right? Cone snails. These things are very, very, very poisonous. And the reason is because over evolutionary periods, they developed a toxin to work very quickly to subdue their prey, right? And so how do they explain how those toxins and those poisons came about in 4,000 years.
They can't. And another thing they can't do is when you actually understand the Hebraic tongue a little bit. I mean, you don't have to be super fluent on it, but if you understand certain Hebrew phrasing, like where it says kabosh, where they'll sometimes translate it to subdue. They'll think subdue means to take care of the earth or whatever. I mean, no, kabosh has a number of ways of being used. It could be used for rape. It could be used for warfare. It could be used for enslavement. It's never benign. So when it talks about and subduing the earth and the creatures in there, and it's basically giving a declaration of war. So it's not a there's
You mean
nothing
words have
in there to
usages?
give them support.
You mean words
Huh?
have usages? Words have usages, and normally the usage of the word is denoted by the context in which the word is used. Yeah,
Yeah, but
interesting. Huh.
it's not only just the context, it's the fact that the context is never, every single time it's never used in a benign manner.
Yeah, it's always not evil, but harmful.
Yeah, so it could be used depending on the context, but at least in the Adam and Eve part, it's used for a declaration of war.
Okay.
There are other parts where it's used for rape. It's used for basically a violation of a person. Used for the wording itself can also be used for enslavement of a person or a whole group. So it's not benign.
I got you. I got you.
And so it doesn't. So when all is said and done, this idea that death did not happen in there is foreign to the A&E text. It's also basically the tree of life in there. That part right there. That when you actually understand the A&E mindset, it was in the scholarly literature based on that. It basically is the cure to death. So basically, kicking Adam and Eve out of the garden was a way of cutting them off from that. So as punishment. So basically, death did exist within the world within the biblical text. So it's not. So Yakut, like I say, it's biblically unattainable.
Yeah, I agree. Reg wanted to say something, and real quick, that name Terry Davies sounds familiar. Just out of curiosity, is this an Australian guy that used to come around my channel like maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, give or take? Is that the same Terry? I remember the name Terry Davies, an Australian that used to come around back when we had the evolution discussions with Isaiah. Remember Isaiah, Reds? The guy that joined the military, the army. I wonder what happened to him. I know he joined the army.
Yeah, no clue.
Whenever he ever got out. I know he was stationed in Korea, but anyways, yeah. So what do you want to say, Reds? Oh yeah,
it was to answer your question.
I got a good memory, huh? Damn, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, you said something like, how can people believe this and blah blah blah. Well, the topic of this of the space is it's a good bridge into this conversation. The reason why they believe it, well, I should say not the reason, but a reason they believe it, is because if you were to believe in the flat earth conspiracy, or you were to believe in a certain flavor of creationism, then to them, they are getting closer to God by believing those things. Being a flat earther means that you're closer to God. Being a creationist means that you're closer to God. They are literally being one with the Father by having these beliefs. That's how they're framing it in their mind. In my opinion, it's complete bullshit, but that's the angle that they're tackling.
Why do they need that though? Why do they need the age of the earth or the flat earth or why do they need that that ontological reality to be the case, to have this? If they're actually Christian,
for some
right?
reason, they made the connection, Steve. They made the connection that this belief equals my relationship with the Heavenly Father. And if you ask them to explain why that connection is there, they will not be able to give you a satisfactory answer.
Yeah, no, I get it because I don't see the connection. And I think Terry Davis was a younger creationist. So come on in, and Terry, if I remember.
And
Terry.
also just keep this in mind. And this is my opinion. I question them on it. Like, why would you do that? Why would you limit God's potential in that way? And I'm speaking about flat Earth in general here, but they believe that there really is a dome over the supposed dirt pizza that we live on, and above that there is the waters above, but it is limited. Whereas if you look at the universe that actually exists, it's a lot bigger than that. And my opinion is, if God does exist, what better way to show your immense power than by making a universe so massive and so deadly to us that it lets us know that you little shits are nothing compared to me. I made this with the snap of my fingers. You don't know the amount of power I have. And that to me is more impressive than a God that decided, you know what, I'm gonna make a pizza out of dirt and I'm gonna put a salad bowl on top of it.
I wanted to say that I wanted to live on a pepperoni slice. Can I live on the pepperoni slice then?
Sorry, it's only dirt.
Has to be jalapenos too, but if I'm doing a review of the Level With Me movie that they came out with, because Witsit made a claim in one of my debates. I went back and watched it that I had to go there to get his answer. So I did. And a lot of these guys, at least in this movie, they believe there's a firmament. Not all flat earthers believe there's a firmament, but they also believe there's outer space, but outer space is out this way to the sides, maybe infinite. There's aliens out there. Upper space is firmament. There's nothing, that's water. Upper space. So they make all these bizarre claims with absolutely no evidence, no biblical evidence. They appeal to other ancient cosmological models and somehow tie that into their belief in a god. So they believe like it's bizarre. They also like the Challenger thing's a big deal. I also want to talk. You asked a question about Australia and the venomous snakes and stuff like that. I don't know what their answer is, so I went to Answers in Genesis to look up something. Let's see what their answer is.
Okay, well, they're authoritative. Yeah,
yeah. So they covered Aborigines, is what I found. It's disgusting. So they're basically saying Noah had the ability to build ships. That's how the Aborigines got to Australia. But at some time they lost all the knowledge, denied God, and became perverted. Basically,
is that a Prudhomme article? Is that by Georgina Prudhomme?
I'm
wondering.
Ken Ham.
Oh, it's by Ken Ham himself. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Ken Ham is delusional. I mean, there's no question about that. That dude is absolutely delusional.
Oh, Vic, I gotta tell you, I gotta jump into this one. I met Ken Ham, and he's an asshole.
I don't doubt it. He's a narcissistic asshole.
Like yeah. Well, I'm not gonna say where I was working, but I was working in a restaurant. His little groupies came in, and I tried to be as pleasant as possible, and he was a complete utter asshole.
I do not doubt that. I don't think he even believes his own BS. I think it's all an act. I really hope that it is, because see, I have a hard time believing that the people that put out the younger creationists and the flat earth stuff actually believe their own BS. I really have a hard time believing it. Do I think that some do? Yes, I am convinced that 1 or 2 people that I know pretty well do believe their stuff, but it's rare. It's rare.
Yeah, when it came down to it, my point of view on that one was like, I'm like, if he's going to be such a jackass to me, I got to keep an eye the girl was so sweet. She was a sweetheart when she was serving them. But in this case, I'm like, I didn't barge in on him or anything like that, but I always had to keep an eye, kind of glance to make sure he wasn't abusing her. And I think one of the big things is like, because I warned the staff, like he was an asshole. They were walking around, and he knew that they were just waiting to kick him out. So he's pretty well known, at least where he went. So I think he understood, you're not gonna go in and treat people like dirt.
Yeah.
So it's
No, I get
whatever.
that.
It's a mix of two things with Kent Ham, in my opinion. One, I do believe that he feels closer to God when he spews this demonstrable bullshit all over the fucking place. But I think there's also a second part to it, and the second part is that it makes him feel like he has a massive penis.
Oh yeah, no, I think it strokes his ego. I mean, I think.
Oh yeah. Basically, the very when he turns on the camera and he starts spewing this scientifically illiterate garbage, at that very moment in time, he has a 20-inch club between his legs.
So, but isn't that kind of similar to you had mentioned, Eric Hovind? Or Eric Hovind is a pale shadow of his father. Kent Hovind is the ultimate con man. Kent Hovind
He's
is
like,
a
I'm trying to
version
live
of-
up to my daddy's greatness.
And in fact, I mean, if you really paid attention, you will see Eric using the same exact word for word stuff that Kent ran. Same wording. He didn't even bother to change it. That's how lazy he is. And he doesn't seem to have the same charismatic conveyance as Kent does. It falls flat.
Absolutely, and quite frankly, there's many of that going around. Let's take a trip down memory lane, a blast from the past, and let me remind you of an individual that we should all forget existed, but we're not going to do that today. It's Shock of God.
Oh, Shock of God. He's been sniffing around my channel, but he's such a coward.
Yeah. But here's the thing:
coward.
if you are ever unfortunate enough to engage in a debate with this duplicitous jackass,
he won't do it.
It is literally word for word William Lane Craig.
Yeah,
word for word. There, I mean, he even mimics the pauses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. No, so Shock of God came sniffing around my channel when I mentioned something about him, and I'd asked him. I said, "Look, I'll have a discussion with you," and he's just like, "Well, first you have to answer, this question." And I'm like, "I already know your stupid question. Everybody knows your stupid question. You've been spewing it for a decade. Nobody gives a crap because you're an idiot." Because he's like, "How do you know atheism is true?" And prove. How do you know atheism is true? And what is it proven?
How do you know that atheism is true and correct?
Yeah, how do you know that atheism is true is correct, right? Which is such a malformed question, and everybody in their brother has already torn this apart. Yeah, everybody in the brother has torn that apart. It makes him look like an idiot. So he knows he's not going to have any discussion with anybody of consequence on that particular thing because it's so stupid. And I'm like, look, I will have a talk with you on it, but you have to engage on a philosophical level, and he can't do it.
Well, that's because just like with Eric, he's just parroting his big daddy, and
William
for Shock of God, William Lane Craig is his big daddy. For Eric, it's his actual daddy.
Yeah.
So what? Sorry,
I just had a debate with the Muslim after I got done with Trey. He came on after Trey left, and he was making the same stupid argument too, that if I can't know God exists, prove God doesn't exist, then I should be an agnostic. I'm like, no. Like, I presented an argument for my justification that all causation is physical, and God is a non-physical claim, so I'm justified in believing that God doesn't exist because there's no such thing as non-physical causation. So and it's a belief. Well, they should be agnostic. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. And there were atheists that got annoyed with me when I said what atheism and atheist meant. But whatever.
I've never, I've never actually talked to Shock of God, but
consider yourself lucky.
Yeah, it was just like I said on my channel, just as far as written. And he's like, "Well, I'll check back with you when you're ready to answer." And I'm like, "I'm not going to answer this in written, and you can go piss off. I mean, I have no interest in playing your silly little games because you're an idiot, and nobody even remembers you hardly any longer." But you're right; he does parrot a lot of William Lane Craig, just like Eric parrots.
No, he does. He doesn't parrot a lot of William Lane Craig. He parrots all of every aspect of William Lane Craig that exists on the internet. You will see a Shock of God version of that.
Darth Dawkins parents Bonson.
Every last bit of it. And so what you have is a whole bunch of these characters not coming up with their own shit. I believe we call that plagiarism.
Yeah, at least people can hate me, but at least I have my own arguments. At least people can say, where you fall on the evolution or creationist debate or atheism or theism, that Steve McRae has literally added to the discourse his own arguments that have been taken pretty seriously. And I know a lot of lay people that have been able to do that. And Shaka God and those types, they don't do anything. They don't add anything. They're
So,
obfuscating. That's it.
I get
something that
accused of reading from a script all the time. I'm like, but it's a different friggin' script every time. What are you talking about? It's a different argument every time.
But here's the thing: I don't care if somebody uses a script. I'm not against using a script because what happens is you have these conversations that are so monotonous and you hear the same things every single time. So at that point, go into script mode. I couldn't care less as long as you're being honest in your argumentation. But when you have this script that will always end up with a sophistic conclusion that's just to manipulate the person, just to use fallacies in this sophistic argumentation, that's where I draw the line. That's where I say you're being dishonest. But if you have a script where you know someone's going to answer this, you're going to answer that, I couldn't care less. That's just, to me, that's functional. I couldn't care.
They're all tied to their scripts, and that's the thing that makes them incredibly dishonest. Is that you try to have a conversation with them where they should form their own thoughts.
They won't deviate from it.
But once you're successful in getting them off of their script, it becomes a cataclysmic dumpster fire, and it can go one of two ways. It's either an entertaining dumpster fire or it's a tragic dumpster fire. Right. And it all depends on the audience at that point.
Because they don't understand the material well enough to deviate from that script.
Well, when I talk about a script, I'm talking my opening argument, not my friggin' debate. Like my opening argument
no, I'm talking
scripted.
about them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about like the Shaka God thing, because I'll repeat, if there is any debate that William Lane Craig was involved in that you can see on YouTube, I can guarantee you that Shaka God has memorized every single word of that debate, and is willing and able to repeat every fucking word of it in the next debate that he happens to be involved in.
I want to put a theory to a test on real quick on that. Okay, so I watched the debate with Dr. Alex Malpass and William Lane Craig on future infinities as opposed to simple infinities. So it was all modal logic and stuff like that. And it took me 3 days to understand this well enough to write something on my blog to explain to the layperson because it was very, 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 very complicated. I had
potential versus actual infinities.
More specifically, simple perfect versus perfect. I don't remember myself, but it took, again, I literally had to try to understand it myself. And I had to ask Alex, is this what you're arguing? And I asked Dr. Rasmussen, is this what they're arguing? And he's like, yeah, you got the gist of it down.
So something that
I want to see Shaka God do that. I want to see Shaka God analyze that particular argument.
So something I would like to bring up too is when it comes out of the yuck, if you look at the person that kind of systemized it, kind of really brought it to a head in the 19th century. And it's kind of interesting to me. I'm not saying she's the one. I'm not saying, so the name I'm bringing up is Ellen G. White, the founder of SDA.
Oh, we remember Ellen G. White.
Yeah, the Ellen G. White. She's the one that popularized yuck and kind of systemized it. And what I'm kind of, I scratch my head and I'm like, with that being the case, and I'm not saying she's the first one to come up with it. What I am saying is that she made it into like a systematic theology. And what is really interesting about Ellen G. White is you look at when it's like people that promote yuck, it's like, do you realize you're pulling from a systematic theology of a heretic? And this is problematic with your education because it's problematic with your education because you're pulling from a cultist, and that does not really bode well with a good learning curve. It frustrates me a little bit because it's like that's an underpinning of yuck that is in history that just causes a whole lot of problems. And
well, I think a lot of people thought Ellen G. White is a heretic. Wasn't she Seventh-day Advent?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's the one. She's one of the founders of it. She's like
yeah,
a big founder of it. And there's a lot of other things that there's a lot of things that she said that was completely wrong. I mean,
yeah.
she
She
tried.
also
She
tried to
tried.
predict when Christ was coming. She got that
Yeah,
wrong, like
yeah, and
6 times. I don't know.
yeah, and but there's other things in her books that she got completely wrong. And then there are also here's another thing. Some the old school SDA, not so much the new ones, but the old school ones are very legalistic. So it's and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some sort of format of rules, but I'm like, when you make it about letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law, you just become you're just ripe for destruction on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, Gary is Usher. Usher was a 17th century monk or priest or whatever the hell he was, but he basically went to the Bible and said, "Hey, if I can I use the genealogies of these dates," even though he had no idea what the actual genealogy were, and plus the Bible doesn't have a complete line. There's probably gaps in there, but he said, "Can I make just by using genealogy the age of the earth?" And that's he came up around 7,000, but it's really a horrific way of
Yeah.
determining the age of the earth by
Wasn't there
Well,
also issues that, one day of God time is like thousands of years in our time or some shit like that,
Yeah,
right?
one day unto
well,
God is a
basic.
thousand years unto man, something.
Yeah, well, when you actually look at the way they did genealogies back then, the reason why when you look at the genealogies where they're like 100, when they're like 900 years old or 300 years old or 500 years old, and you understand the point, it's there's actually mathematical there's math play in there. It's I mean, we can go that's a whole different topic than that we could go down, but they're not promoting that people were literally that old when they died. It deals with it deals specifically with the significance of that person's status in society.
Yeah, I have no info on that one way or another. I just know that people don't live to 900 years old.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sorry, they just
Oh
don't.
no, but I mean
It's
when
just a biological impossibility. I mean, your cells just won't divide that many times. You're eventually your um, telomeres are going to wear out. You're going to get just apoptosis. Your cells are going to
Like
die.
like
It's
living 900 years, dude. I'm only 30
yeah.
and I've already had it up to here with you motherfuckers.
Right.
yeah,
I mean,
so yeah,
senescence is a
yeah,
thing. I mean, you're like we're as biological humans only have a certain expectancy for our bodies, and people that make it to their hundreds are doing pretty well. But there's been no documentation of anybody living to 180 years of age or something, more or less three,
yeah.
4, 900 years of age. This is not possible. You'd be dust.
Yeah, well, we're basically it's basically those genealogies that bring up those high age numbers. Those aren't literal ages of those people. So there is a book I got to look for on that. But there's but when you look at like when you look at king's lists and everything like that, there's actually a specific reason why you have 365 for Enoch, and then there's also certain other numbers. But when you
Wasn't it based
actually
on hex? Wasn't it based on 60 hex 60 or excuse me, base 60?
I cannot remember all the mathematical formulas
I
that
don't
go
either.
over that, but there's a numerology there's a numerology that is being played with right there, and so
I
when
hate numerology so
Oh
much.
god.
yeah
Yeah, the Hayflick limit. The Hayflick limit is basically saying that cells can only somatic cells can only divide a certain amount of times. I think it's on 50, give or take, if I remember
yeah
correctly. Yeah.
yeah, and so but still there's a number play going on right there, and and so it goes back to the thing there. It's anti-biblical for them to try and take those and uh play that it's very it's a lie. It's really a lie for that a complete deception for them to use those numbers and claim that humans literally lived that long. They
Mhm.
didn't.
There's
And when an ancient Near Eastern person would have heard those numbers and in the format that it's in, they would have understood there was a point of significance, and there was also here when you actually understand how their divisions of the document would have been divvied up. When you actually get into those long listed genealogies, it's like, okay, we're skipping ahead. That's another reason why they put them in there, because
I'm gonna
they didn't have
add two
chapter division.
things.
They didn't have. Go ahead.
Going to add two things to this. One, I was able to use. There's a user I used to speak to in the past. His name was Russian Vids, and he was big into the numerology thing. And so what I did was I used numerology with his name, his username, and with the use of numerology, using the logic and the parameters that he set in place, I was able to prove, again via numerology, that he had a sexual relationship with O.J. Simpson and that he was the bottom bitch. And it gave me like 15 more minutes to play around with the numbers. I could have proven that he enjoyed every second of it. And also, the second point I'm going to make, Mr. Host of Matters Now, your mic isn't working.
That would explain why I was trying to talk. No one was like,
oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. I didn't hear anything.
Thank you so much, Red. I did want to.
I was tabbed out, so I didn't notice. If you were trying to talk to me, I would never ignore you like that. It's like, what a dick.
So I think like some of the attempt they were trying to make was trying to predict like when Jesus would come back, when everybody's going to go to heaven and stuff like that. But then they forget the passage is what it says, Thessalonians 5, that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. But then they like claim they have some special knowledge because they're true believers, they can know. Yeah. But it is unbiblical. And I want to point out too, like we're talking like 1,000 years is sort of like at the time when that was written, it was a huge number. It was like an inconceivable like sort of concept, like when we say infinity would be today. If I wanted to steel man,
it's equivalent to a metric fuck ton.
Yeah.
So the 1,000 back then wasn't like our 1,000 now.
Yeah.
I think it was conceptually. No, I just think conceptually it was a lot.
They might have not had like a number system. I just want to bring up a thing. In my debate with Nadir, because I brought up the 6-day creation story because he was trying to claim the Quran is scientific, but they do avoid this thing in the Quran. They say a day is like 50,000 years, 30,000 years, 1,000 years. Like it's all whatever the period of time God needed to do that creation event. So the Quran does sort of like to give them some credit. They're sort of fixed. It's not like they're fixing the ambiguity, but they make it more clear that it's just a huge number.
Yeah, that's like a safety net for them.
So when you really get like I say, you go once you bring in the ancient Near Eastern mindset to the text, the ability for Yek just coming out of that, it just evaporates really quickly. But then I think it was what is his name? Ben Stanhope wrote an incredible book on that, and also used that to give a biblical refutation of the Creation Science Museum. So it's or whatever they call it. But once you understand, when you actually understand it from the ancient Near Eastern mindset, it is a very gorgeous text. It's beautiful. It is a literary masterpiece, and Yek, I'm going to say right now, gives utmost disrespect to that art, and it really is a tragedy for them to not teach people to respect it for what it really is.
Yeah, well, it's an affront to literature, it's an affront to history, it's an affront to Christianity, it's an affront to science, and yet they're so adamant that they're right, and most of the time they always seem to denigrate into personal attacks and just, oh, you're just been brainwashed by evolution, and yet they say there's no evidence here, and then you can give them so much massive studies, and they're like, oh, you're just appealing to science. It's like, you can pick a lane here. You're just keep moving the goalpost. Every time I've ever dealt with a young creationist and they ask for something, you give it to them, they move the goalpost to something else every single solitary time, without question.
And they lose the advantage of treating the Bible as sort of allegorical to teach life lessons. And then, like, okay, you're going to say the Bible's scientific and not a parable. What about the mustard seed? That cannot be a scientific claim. It
But they'll
must
accept
be a
that's a
parable.
parable. Yeah, they'll accept that.
Yeah.
I think even younger creation accept that.
Then how do they explain the fact that you actually have Leviathan a few times within the Bible?
Or
Well,
dragons.
yeah, and like Leviathan itself, when you actually look at the Baal cycle of the Ugarit, it's the Mesopotamian, one of the Mesopotamian gods of watery chaos, and it has kind of it's kind of like a seven-headed dragon of
Mhm.
watery chaos. So when you look at that, David is using that as a literary device.
It's not a dinosaur.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's not a dinosaur.
George
They
Lujac.
believe it's a dragon, though.
Yeah,
I watched
I
these
know.
debates. They believe they're dragons.
Did you watch George Lujac the other day come back on the Non Sequitur show? He literally said that they were dragons and they possibly could have breathed fire. He doesn't know how because it's impossible. And then of course he brings up the Dwayne Gish bombardier beetle, which has been explained ad nauseum.
There's a beetle that breathes fire?
No, but he said it did, and I'm like, no, the bombardier beetle has on its ass a mechanism that allows it to combine hydrogen peroxide with this other chemical that produces an exothermic reaction that produces heat, and so it's a burning is what it does. It's not fire. There's no combusting, combustion of fuel with oxidation. And he wasn't understanding this because he's George Lujac. But real quick, Gary makes a good point. He says the most dishonest thing about young creationists is the claim of historical science. What the fuck is that? There's no such thing as historical science. It doesn't. I've never heard it, except for creationists.
Or T-Jump. Tom Jump says history is scientific.
What is?
Tom Jump says.
Well,
Tom Jump will argue that history is scientific.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
you have a specialized field called history of science, but there is no quote historical science. I mean,
science is not even empirical. I mean, sure, archaeology is and discovering of things in the past. There's a methodological approach to it, but history itself is not an experimental science. It's not empirical science.
History of science itself basically deals with a number of things, including the historical development of it, who was involved, the biographies, and all that. So, I mean, of course, if you're going to deal with the history of science, you want to go to historians that specialize in that, and not so much the scientists, because scientists tend to. But when all is said and done, historical science, what the that right there is stupid.
Historical science. Okay, cool.
It makes
like
no
a
sense.
Florf argument.
And then they'll say, well, you're arguing from authority, which, by the way, is not always fallacious. The reason we have experts that are trained in a specific field because one person cannot know everything. And so we do defer to experts. That's how society works. That's not fallacious. If you thought appealing to authority was fallacious, you would never go to a doctor.
But I would say, like, history is useful for debates and stuff like that. Like, I can justify an historical belief based upon first-hand accounts, second-hand accounts, collaboration between second-hand accounts, and justify, like, the moon landing. I could justify the moon landing. I've done those stupid debates too. Is true based upon the historical record for the moon landing, first-hand testimony, stuff like that. I don't even have to touch science to justify my belief that the moon landing is real, but I typically provide justification for why it was physically possible and the historical record for the moon landing. So, like, history is useful, but it's not science. Like,
right.
Yeah, we have a name for it. It's called history.
Now they have what's called historical sciences, but that's not the study of history per se. It's the study of the artifacts. Yeah, and how to
Oh.
do history, the methodological approach to history, which is perfectly fine.
Historicity.
Yeah.
I went to
Historiography.
graduate school for history for a year. I didn't finish, but I went 1 year.
Yeah,
And even then, when they use the word science, it's always soft sciences, and I will die on that hill. I'm sorry, but there's certain people things called science are not hard sciences. There is a distinction.
yeah, and there's and one of the I think one of the things that is clear that a lot of yaks don't understand is that what's his name, like I'm just going to go with Ken Ham right here off the top of my head. Ken Ham is not a scientist, he's a businessman.
Right.
You know, when it comes down to business, holy crap, I wish I knew maybe a tenth of what he
Oh, I'll
understands
give him
on
that.
business.
Oh, dude, look at how he manipulated the denizens of Williamsburg, right, to get the ark there. He lied to the city council. He lied to the constituents. He said there was going to get tax breaks. It didn't do anything. It is not. I mean, right now, I guess supposedly they're having an influx of people that visit the ark, which probably is true, but he never really released the numbers. But that town has not seen some big major increase of economic gain. He's the only one that's made anything from anything. He bamboozled them. $100
Yeah,
million
and
for
so
nothing.
here, yeah, yeah, and it's that's kind of that's I mean you look at it, it's like that, it's really a waste of space that happened there. Just look at the fact that he gets things really historically wrong, like the part where he had the I remember when he had the Ten Commandments up there, and he put it in a type of script that would have dated back to like the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the type of script that Moses would have used would have looked more pictographic, kind of the akin to the Phoenician script. And I mean, even there, it's like, dude, this is if you're going to do this so-called science museum, at least get defer to historians that could have gotten that right.
Christian historians too, if you want to. Like, there's Christian history and stuff. And is there like a danger to being a young Earth creation? I think there is. I watched the Greg Locke and Dean Odell debate because whatever reason I'm stuck in this flat Earth world, and it was a flat Earth debate on theology. But Greg Locke, his argument basically was, you know, all those conspiracy theories and all the other stuff, I believe all those, but flat Earth is just that one step too far. But you know, vaccines, healthcare, the age of the world, the NASA line, all these lies. Of course, you're right about all those. So I think there's there's problems with our society where people are able to nurture these ignorant beliefs that people aren't getting vaccinated anymore. People aren't taking their children to the doctors when they should.
Because
People will
everyone's trying to get them. It's that damn 5G.
5G. Kyle Adams, I did a debate with him, and he's a Mormon flat earther. But anyways, he claimed his daughter or kid, a couple years old, had 108 fever, and he said he verified it with like 3 different thermometers. 108 fever.
You'd
What
be
would
dead.
I be doing?
You'd be dead.
Well,
You'd get brain damage.
that's what I said. So I looked up cases and maybe not. Maybe
107.8, I think. I thought the highest I've ever seen, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but it's Kyle. He's an idiot, and she was young. The child was young, so children can have higher fevers than adults. But anyways, you know what he does? Instead of calling 911, rushing the kid to the hospital, he gets down and prays and says the fever immediately broke, and then they were okay. Nothing happened after.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Yeah, here we go. The highest reported core body temperature in a patient who survived without permanent residual defects was 115.7.
115.
Here's the biggest thing is that this is a big reason why
That's high. That's high. Oh my God.
I've had discussions with a friend of mine on this, and we were talking about all these extreme things that are going on, where people will take extremes like that. We're like, we even he and I actually explained, we explained to some of the people, and unfortunately even in the Orthodox Church there are people that are, I would consider, fundamentalists coming in, and I told the fundamentalists, I'm like, if you actually read the major church fathers, they would have all told you to stay on middle ground. And okay, and it's one of those things. If a person is sick, they teach if the history of the church is you take care of their illness. You take care of that. Yes, pray. That's okay, but you take care of it. But if you're cutting them off from care, and you're just saying, "Oh, I'm going to get on my knees and pray," and I'm going to cut them off from care. Okay, you've just done a disservice to them, and
Yeah,
then
it's abuse.
right,
It's child abuse. And if you get, I've always said, if you're a Jehovah Witness, you're welcome to have your beliefs, but as soon as your beliefs encroach upon the safety of your child, you're held criminally liable.
yeah. Well, it's also and another thing in there, like you go, well, let's use the Jehovah Witness blood transfusion thing. I think they're talking about consumption of blood, but they forget a thing in there. That right there is a that right there has that connotation right there is more of a ritualistic thing dealing with paganism. It's not talking about blood transfusion.
I would also say that most of I'll do it like this. They believe that vaccines are yet another attempt to get people away from God. Now, how they get to that conclusion, you're gonna have to talk to them about it. But
Because reasons.
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And what I would like to see happen is I would like to see these individuals get held accountable for that, because in my opinion, it is child abuse. But also, I will say that a lot of people who would say that, I believe, and I want to believe, that when push comes to shove, they will relent and they will take their child to the hospital.
Some,
I
not
want
all.
to believe
Well,
that. I want
Not all.
to.
No, not all, unfortunately.
He did say, because my first inclination, because I'm a father, was to reach to the screen and friggin' smack Kyle. Like, there's no way this is your testimony for proving God exists.
Yeah,
And-
it's
People have an audience they're playing to.
Yeah. So I patiently asked Kyle, if her fever hadn't broken, what would you have done? Well, I would have taken her to the emergency room, called 911. I was like, okay.
in the
I
one
think you're lying.
But here's the one I don't believe is 108. I mean, sure, it's possible, but I mean, again, those are rare. We have to be super rare. But
I'd still be
wouldn't
rushed
you-
to the emergency room.
wouldn't that be your first response rather than prayer? Or why wouldn't you use them coextensively?
I mean, you can be like, let's go ahead and get you to the doctors, and then we'll pray.
Right.
Well,
Right.
another-
Exactly.
Another thing, when you actually go another thing that I think he kind of forgot too in there is you live in prayer, but that does not mean you go in and Christians are supposed to live in prayer. I'm very imperfect in that, but you're supposed to live in prayer, but that does not mean you negate your responsibility.
Go figure. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to head out, and I wish to say goodnight to all of you. And also, before I leave, I do want to give a shout out to an individual. If you are the type of if you're the type of person that wants to see anti-vaxxers actually get reamed, like I mean truly reamed, then subscribe to a channel by the name of Debunk the Funk. I am trying to get him to agree to a show on the Non Sequitur show, so stay tuned for that. More to come later. But if you subscribe to his channel, he does an amazing job debunking pseudoscientific nonsense when it comes to the anti-vax bullshit that you see all the time. So check them out if you want to see that. And yeah, have a good night.
Yeah, I'm going to be wrapping up too. I don't want these things to go for too long. I just want to hang out for a while. I do got to eat. I am so hungry. I have not eaten all day today. Really. So I'm going to call it. But we're gonna do these on the weekends when I'm free, and usually Saturday night's good. So I'm busy on the mornings, but at night not so much. So, anyways, guys, what do you guys think of these old school type panel hangouts? I miss them. They're fun because you never know what's going to come up. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what people are going to talk about, right?
Yeah, and
All
well,
the
I
time
kind of
lately.
yeah. Well, I like them. It's just I don't with my job, and I'm not gonna say exactly what it is, but with my job, I deal with behaviorally prone people. So especially in the next few weeks, I'm gonna be working 80-hour weeks. So this is gonna be far and few between.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But hey, at least got by tonight, and we got some people to drop in and give their input. Ozian, what you been doing, man? You got some stuff going on. You want to chill? Because as soon as I wrap this up, I'm gonna boot.
Okay.
myself.
I'm going to do a pre-show and after show for the MC Tune and McGlobe face versus some Satan is hiding the globe person on a flat Earth debate on modern day debate. And I'm going to be hosting the after show on MC Tune Live and Matters Now for them. So you'll see me on both
Awesome. Well,
channels.
tell
So
MC Tune hi for me, man.
I will.
Do me a solid when you next time you see him, let him know that I said that his Gotta Light a Flirth shorts have been just absolutely freaking brilliant. Will you do that for me?
Gotta light
Word for
a
word.
flirt.
You Gotta Light a
Light-
Flirts. His Gotta Light a Flirts have been absolutely brilliant. I love it. Go check them out. They're shorts and they're just you Gotta Light a Flirt, and they're basically stuff from Twitter. These flat earthers that just absolutely are lying. I mean, it's not even a matter of misunderstanding. It is they're going out of their way to willfully lie, right? So
Yeah. Oh yeah,
right, guys.
a lot of them do. You could always come on and tell them yourself.
Well, he's been on my channels, but he's never invited me on his.
Well,
Modern Day Debate, of course, does. I mean, Modern Day Debate trying to get me to debate all the freaking time, but he always give me a topic I don't want to. Hey, Steve, you want to go debate the Quran? When the hell do I know? I mean, what do I know about the Quran? I've never read the Quran. Why would you want me to debate something like that? I don't, but no, if it's on your channel, I would love to stop by. If I don't know, we'll see. Depends on the time, obviously, but yeah, but at least let him know that I really.
PM.
Oh yeah, anything after 10, I'm good.
11 p.m. Eastern, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. But yeah, let him know that I love that series he's been doing.
I wrote it down.
Gotta Light a Flirth, because it's so true. Like this one flirter was saying, oh, this particular image of the Earth from the moon was from Apollo 11. This one was from Apollo 9. This was Apollo 13. It's like, wait a minute, they don't even go to the moon. It's all from I think there are 3 shots from Apollo 12, if I'm not mistaken, that he said were from 3 different moon missions that are exactly the same. The clouds were exactly the same. It's like, no, they were all stills from the same footage from the same Apollo mission. You dishonest piece of shit. All right, but anyways, I gotta go. Colorado Biker says, thank you. Good conversation. I would have joined, but my camera and mic are set up in the other room for doing next work videos next time. That sounds good. We'll get you next time. Thanks for joining, Ozian. Thanks for Maximus Confessor. I'm going to take us out here and leave the hangout and end stream. So good night, guys, and I'll see you later. Peace.
Adios.
Adios.